Hey everyone, Jim Coventry from RotoWire here, going over NFL news and notes from a fantasy football perspective. Look, we didn't broadcast recently, so talk about DeShaun Watson first. 11 game suspension. We are here for the fantasy fallout. That's what we're here for. So right now, Jacoby Brissett is the starter. We don't know if a deal is in the works for Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo may not be fully back from that shoulder. We know he has been easing that back. So I think what we have to understand, regardless of quarterback, for the first 11 games, there are a couple of players who are negatively impacted here. Look, Jimmy Garoppolo was not big at throwing the deep ball in San Francisco. I do not expect that to be the case if he moves to Cleveland. Jacoby Brissett, kind of the same thing, not really a consistent deep ball thrower. So I think Donovan People-Jones, who's been the clear number 2 in their camp, I don't know how much fantasy value he really carries because ultimately I see him at his best as a downfield receiver. So I think that takes away a lot of the potential upside that he had. So if you were targeting him in the latter rounds, that may not be great, especially with Watson not around for a while. David Njoku, kind of the same thing. You know, he's a very athletic tight end. He had a good season very early in his career, but for the most part, he's a downfield seam stretcher. Now, there's a little more optimism there because running the middle of the field, here's how I explain it. Quarterbacks that don't have necessarily big arms, if you're throwing the ball to the outside of the field downfield, you're also throwing it, 15 yards or so across the field through coverage. The drive on that ball needs significantly more zip. But if you're hitting passes down the seam, it's more of a straight throw. It's much less yardage, gets there quicker. So I think Njoku, although he could get dinged a little bit, I actually think overall he probably ends up being okay. He loses some of the upside he may have had if Watson was back sooner because Watson ultimately would lead the team more likely to throw more. This is going to be a running attack. The Browns are going to go back to what they've done the last couple of years, and they're very well prepared to do that. They have a very good run blocking offensive line. Of course, you have the great running back group, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and maybe we see mixed in Dearness Johnson here and there. And Joe, I'll get your question in a minute. And I also want to talk about the idea of Amari Cooper. We do have to talk about him. I know the Browns do in a tough division. I know there's some physical defenses. But the whole Kevin Stefanski offense, when it's running with a run-based system, we're looking at a lot of play action. Amari Cooper is good at running routes. I don't know how many devastating corners there are in, the 6 games they play against their division. The Ravens have the best group of them, really. But I think Amari Cooper with his route running and Brissett's going to need to get him the ball. I was listening to one of the beat writers from the Browns, and again, I don't always put stock into what they say. But realistically, when they're running offense in practice, the line is that Cooper's getting the majority of the passes his way. And why not? All the other receivers are at different stages of learning the game, getting better, but not really versatile. Amari Cooper, if he is targeted heavily, I believe he's the type of player that feeds off that. We've seen him really get frustrated when he wasn't seeing a whole lot of targets. And so anyway, I do think Amari Cooper is being drafted at a point where I think you're getting a value out of him. He's going to get targets. If you're in a PPR league, I think you saddle up and you say, you know what, this is going to be a good play. And then when Watson comes back and you're nearing your stretch run for your fantasy playoffs, now we see some really elevated ceiling. So I wanted to point that. Now, in terms of whether you draft Watson or not, there's a moral dilemma for some people, and I get it. Hey, if you don't want to draft him, definitely don't, because, I don't need to go over all the things that he has going on. So I totally get it if you don't want to draft him. Those who choose they want to draft him, he's currently in all my ADP data, last 3 days for my friends over at fantasymojo.com, Darren Armani does great work with the ADP from the high stakes. In the last 3 days, we have the quarterback Watson going at QB 21, pick 199. So if you're in a league where you need a third quarterback, then you definitely could consider, if you don't have a moral issue taking Watson that late, is pretty much a dart throw. But if your team is good enough to get you near the fantasy playoffs, that could be useful. Again, I don't know that I'm drafting him because, again, I usually don't get upset, but it's one of these things where it really bothers me. Anyway, the questions in the chat, I'm going to answer those at the end of this. So I'll get to you. Just hang on a little bit. Let's move to the Washington Commanders. So in the preseason game, second one, Antonio Gibson was used as a runner, as a receiver, and as a kick returner. It reflects practice. Now, Brian Robinson got the start, and J.D. McKissic did not play, to my knowledge. So here's what I want you to know about this. Currently, yes, Gibson's ADP is dropping, but he's still going as running back 30. Now, he was closer to 22 a week or two ago, and he's at pick 88. We know that J.D. McKissic is really involved in their plans because remember, Buffalo had him all but signed in the legal tampering period of free agency, and apparently Washington came back strong and McKissic returned. And now we're seeing Brian Robinson, who's more of a grinder back, but what they need. And remember, Gibson has had fumbling issues. So Robinson got the start. He may be the inside runner. He may get the goal line work. This is a messy backfield because I can't see them completely phasing Gibson out. So I think this really hurts everybody in the group. I don't know that Robinson gets enough work to be a strong fantasy contributor. I think that Gibson will have to be used on some passing downs, not all. If they're trailing big, I think McKissic is their guy. So I am very concerned with all three of their workload. And I don't know that any of them end up helping their fantasy managers. Now, here's a scenario. J.D. McKissic is getting closer to 30 years old. Anytime a back who's not among the league's elite are getting up there in age, it's always possible they fall off a cliff quickly. So if that happens, Gibson could move into a passing down role, but at his ADP, you're spending in a 12-team league an early 8th round pick on him, and I don't know if you want to take that risk. But if that's what your thought is, we know Gibson has elite talent, but he doesn't really run the plays as called and the fumbling issues. So I'm just avoiding the Commanders' backfield altogether. And again, questions that are sitting there, I'll get to those all at the end. So hang with me. Albert Okwuegbunam. So basically, the preseason game. He played the full preseason game when the starters weren't playing. So we got to analyze this, okay? One of my jobs is this, right? To find out what's smoke and what's problems. So Coach Nathaniel Hackett said, look, Albert O needs reps. So now you think about that as, oh, he needs reps. Is he in trouble? I don't think so. Here's what I'm understanding. As I went through practice reports recently, they were using Okwuegbunam all over the formation, which is different than what he's done in the past. I think they really want to weaponize him and make him a very versatile option. Now, Greg Dulcich misses came with a hamstring. I don't think that impacts it. I think Coach Hackett is trying to get Okwuegbunam comfortable in many different places in the formation. And the place to do that is in a preseason game. Now, you're risking injury, of course, and you don't like that. But I think this is more of a boost for Okwuegbunam when I think a lot of the fantasy community is going to overreact in the other direction and say, oh, he's in the doghouse. I don't think that's the case. Now, we all speculate, right? But I think that's where we need to go with this. Currently, Albert Okwuegbunam is at tight end 14 in average drafts, pick 122. It's a very reasonable ADP, especially if, as it seems, they're going to move him around. Because the one thing I didn't like is Russell Wilson does have issues, in my opinion, throwing over the middle of the field to the short and the middle areas. He goes downfield over the middle very well. And if Okwuegbunam was going to run traditional tight end routes, we haven't had a lot of synergy from Russell Wilson and his tight ends in that type of script. But if he got them a little more vertical, that would work. And moving Okwuegbunam around does them. So again, I think at this point, it's a buying opportunity on him if there's not another tight end in that range you like. But at this point, especially if you're in a 2 tight end league, I think that's a very, very safe and reasonable play. Now let's talk about that Chiefs backfield. So breaking this down, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is currently going at running back 27, pick 79. It's in the range of where he's been going for quite some time. Now, what we need to understand is he comes into this season seemingly in the lead for the job. Andy Reid is pretty set with his veterans at first. He will give Edwards-Helaire a couple of games to either run with it or to say at that point, maybe I'm moving a different direction. And of course, they have significant draft capital invested in him as well. But I think more than anything, Andy Reid is going to give him a chance. Now, you could blame his inefficiency the last 2 seasons, saying he's not good. B, there have been some injuries, he's been nicked up, and that's been a problem. So you need to make a decision on how you would like to frame that. Personally, I think he's been healthy enough, but just has not taken advantage of the running lanes. He's faced light boxes. He's had outstanding run blocking, especially last year, and yet he doesn't consistently get the yardage that is there for him. We've seen Darrell Williams, who, I say Mario Puig and I do the show on Saturdays, and I like how Mario says that basically Darrell Williams is a fullback, but yet he was useful because he just got to the area and went. Now he's better better as a receiver, as a runner. So Edwards-Helaire gets the shot. At running back 27, if he keeps that role, even if he gets 12 touches a game, he's a value there. So if you think he can hold the job, that'll be fine. Here's my concern with Isaiah Pacheco. I am very interested when I talk about Andy Reid's comments. The comments that put Pacheco into this draft stratosphere, he's going as running back 40 right now at pick 128. And the comment that Reid made was along the lines of, man, he runs really hard. And people ran with that. But when Reid carried on in his discussion, his intimation was that you can't run at one speed in the NFL. There's nuance. You got to run to the play. And that's who Pacheco kind of is from his college days. He's one speed, but he gets blazing with that speed. That, to me, is a change of pace back in the NFL. Once you know he gets the ball and he's going directly downhill, there's merit to that. But defenses know that. There's not going to be any apprehension. And I don't even know how much lateral agility we're going to be seeing here. So, look, at RB40, I think right now people are pricing him in as potential upside, whereas I think he's more change of pace. I think that if Clyde Edwards-Helaire falls flat, I think there's a world where Derek Gore get some work, because Derek Gore was 5 yards a carry, and he was very good last year when he got the opportunity. Again, he took advantage of what was given. And whereas Pacheco, he has good size, like over 6 foot, he's 215, he has good size. But again, I just have some concerns there. If you don't roll with him, but that's kind of how I see it. Now, Ronald Jones falling out of favor quickly. The lines that have been given, he's like fallen out of favor. He has a very friendly contract in terms of letting him go. So he's fallen to running back 63 and pick 183 over the last 3 days. So people are completely fading him at this point. And look, what we've seen in the last few years, we liked how he bulked up and he ran hard, but he has ball security issues. He's not very consistent. And maybe that's what they're seeing in camp. I think if you're in a very deep league, in a PPR especially, look, I know this guy's been hurt his whole career, but I think the late dart throw is Jerick McKinnon. He's running back 69, 197th pick. He's free. And I go back to last year's playoffs. In last year's playoffs, he was running real routes out of the backfield. Andy Reid has always wanted his running backs to run real routes. The Brian Westbrook days in Philadelphia. Very few running backs run complex routes. In that playoff game against Pittsburgh, I remember 2 specific routes that McKinnon ran, and Andy Reid just dialed those plays up, and they were big yardage. Now, I don't think McKinnon gets used a lot as a runner, because I think Andy Reid realizes he's over 30, injury history, but he got real solid usage out of McKinnon. He could get 4 to 6 carries in a game, and he was really good going against light boxes. So again, I think you're in a PPR league. I think you're super late. Why not? You could use him as a running back 5. You could bye weeks if he's still around. You can always drop him if he's not doing anything at that late of an investment. All right, let's talk about Nico Collins next. Not a lot of stock in preseason games, but he did play with Davis Mills, and the duo connected 4 times for 48 yards and a touchdown. Collins was targeted 6 times. Look, I was excited about Collins. Collins got nicked up with a shoulder early last season. It was clear they were going to get him targets, a lot of growing pains, and then Davis Mills comes in, rookie quarterback, rookie receiver. But Davis Mills had a number of 300-yard games, and we know Brandon Cooks is the man. So, hey, Eddie, and I'll get to everybody at the end. Any questions, too? So, Nico Collins is an outside physical perimeter receiver. The Texans traded up to get him last year. The buzz has not been crazy, but it's been steady and positive for Collins. Collins is going to get targets from a team that is going to trail often. So, I think Nico Collins is in a great spot. I don't know how big his ceiling is, but I think there's a very strong possibility he gets you at least 850 yards and 5 touchdowns this year. I totally could see that happening. And I think there is a ceiling for more, because again, when they traded up for him, they saw something they liked, and I think there's been nothing to discourage them since. Romeo Doubs keeps coming up every day in training camps, and now he did score a touchdown in the preseason game, but it came from Jordan Love, so we got to understand that as well. And the Saints, who they played a lot of backups. So I'm glad Doubs had the touchdown, 3 for 24 receiving, 5 targets, Jordan Love again. But I still think nonetheless, Romeo Doubs is going to have an opportunity to get on the field. And he was productive in college. The type of production he had can translate. But I think if you're playing with Aaron Rodgers and he can get his trust, his ADP is still reasonable. He's wide receiver 55. So he's going as a wide receiver 5, 129 picks into a draft. I think if you want an opportunity for upside, Aaron Rodgers will make it work with somebody. Now, maybe it's Allen Lazard. Lazard does play a lot of slot. He's a great blocker. I don't know where he lines up, would make him a frequent alpha, and I don't know that Doubs is either, but I think Doubs could get significant target share. Sammy Watkins, we know he misses a lot of time. So again, I still think it is ADP. Doubs is reasonable. Chris Olave, so wide receiver 45, pick 102. A lot of us love him. Now, he did score a touchdown, and people make a big deal out of that. Olave played almost the entire first half, but he was with all the subs. Ian Book was the quarterback. He scored the touchdown with Book. The Packers weren't playing anybody. Not saying it's a bad sign for Olave. He scored, and that's a great thing. But don't say because he scored, he's on his way. It really was a scrimmage. So you keep him where you were. Don't boost him because of the touchdown, because that might be an overreaction to the news. Now, I just want to quickly touch on the Bears. I know that in the short time Justin Fields played, which was a drive, I think it was a drive. I don't think it was 2. It was a field goal drive. That was it. Well, he was under tremendous pressure in a preseason game. We didn't like that. But what we did like was he had 2 connections to Cole Kmet, and the second one was a designed rollout to the left, and he got him for like a 24-yard gain. It was beautiful. And then he did connect well with Mooney. And then the second one, he just overthrew a touchdown in the back of the end zone. My point is this: that offense is going to be all about Kmet and Mooney. And when you get that quarterback on the move, it's not like defenses can sit. Both of these receivers seem to understand that they need to move when their quarterback's moving. That makes it difficult to cover. Mooney showed last year he's not a situational deep threat. He can run all the routes. So he is definitely in play. He's going as wide receiver 31, pick 61. I think he's a wide receiver 2, hands down, no questions asked. I think he's an easy pick for me. And look, do you want to invest in Bears? Not so much, but their defense is not projected to be great. It's going to be improved. They have a couple good draft picks. They're solid, but good offenses are going to move the ball. And Cole Kmet is going to be their presence in the middle of the field. I don't believe the Bears have receivers to do that. So I'm in on both of them. Now, I would like to not put both of them on all my teams. I'd like to have some split representation across my rosters. But that said, one or the other, I think so. Now, real quick, Kyle Phillips, he's going as a wide receiver 98. He's on the Tennessee Titans, battling for a slot role. He does project to be a very good slot receiver. But what I want you to understand is this: it would take Derrick Henry not being effective, or the run game kind of not working, or the defense completely folding. So understand that Kyle Phillips, if you're in a super, super, super deep league, and if things work where they have to throw more, as a slot receiver, he would have some value. But again, we're not holding our breath. And all right, I think we're good. We'll take questions now. So the questions we'll have are this. Joe asked, what do I think of Gainwell? So, yeah, I love Gainwell this year. First of all, he'll have that receiving back role. And they also like to use him in the red zone. I don't have my numbers in front of me, but when Gainwell had significant snaps every one of those games, I want to say that he had at least 13.3 PPR points last year. And I think he'll have a chance to get some of the work from Miles Sanders. Sanders will still be the lead guy, but Sanders goes down a lot. He'll miss time. I think Gainwell he has a great floor for where you're getting him, and he has serious breakout potential. And Joe, thank you, man. I appreciate you listening to us on XM. Yeah, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 3 Eastern. Thank you. It means a lot. And Robert asked, Gainwell and Gibson. I talked about Gainwell just now, so I think we're good there. And Gibson, I think you caught me on the show there, so I think I covered him well for you. And Sean, I did touch on Pacheco, so I think you're in good shape there. And Sean said the Gibson role like Rex Burkhead. Yes, I think so. I think comparing him to Rex Burkhead, now the talent is here and there, right? But yes, I think similarly. And I think in the RotoWire note, they wrote jack of all trades for Gibson. That's not what we were hoping. But yes, similar. And there are more paths to Gibson getting more work. And we'll see how that works. Robert asked about Dameon Pierce. Yeah, it seems right now, we'll extrapolate out here. He did not start the preseason game, but the coaching staff intimated they kind of know what they have. So it's possible he's in the lead for that role. Now, remember, Houston has a horrible defense. They're going to trail most weeks. I think the backs that pass protect the best are going to see the most playing time. That could be Burkhead. That could be Marlon Mack. Pierce is going to, if he gets the early down role, that's great. But how long does that last? If they're getting blown out at the end of the first quarter, is he game scripted out? So this is what we have to be careful with. Yes, he seems to be right now. He seems to be the lead guy, but we don't really know. And that's the problem we have. They're going to trail a lot. And unless Pierce is really a factor in pass protection, that's what the coaches want. That's where it's going to be the decision. So basically, I had to move Pierce up a little bit, my board, and I moved Marlon Mack down a little bit. But I still think Mack is the guy because of the pass protection ability. I think he ends up with more PPR points because they'll use him more as a receiver. And Rex Burke had to get mixed in. Eddie, yeah. Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Say I'm looking younger. Appreciate that. Yeah, believe me, shaving your head, that's kind of crazy, right? Sean, man, appreciate you. Thanks. And then Kenny G. Oh, what am I missing here? Kenny Gainwell. I want to talk about Kenny Gainwell already, so I think we're good there. And Sean, poor Justin Fields, man on the island, but it's a good thing that he can run. Hey, appreciate everybody. Thanks for hanging in. Everybody have a great